I'm Alexandra Kreis, and you're listening to Outer Travel in a Journey. Journeying now for 30 years into the life and practice of yoga, I have met many who have taken interesting turns, went past extraordinary bumps, and reached unexpected places. People with whom I shared conversations about everyday struggles, intimate realizations, larger questions, ideas, and dreams. So today, I'm passing on the mic to one of them so we could hear and celebrate the wisdom in people's differences and experiences. Welcome, everybody, back to How to Travel in a Journey. The guest on my show today is Gianna Shamone. Hi, Gianna.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm super excited.
Yeah, so am I. This conversation we're about to have kind of fits into what I discovered for me lately. I never felt like I'm a writer, and and maybe I'm not, but we are here to listen to Gianna's extraordinary journey from being already an artist. She was born in Hamburg originally, and then I understand you had your fair share of moving around the world with the jobs you have, like the ones that are supposed to bring you money, like director of music videos and assisting artists to do what they need to do to be seen and heard. And yeah, and there you were scribbling along all the time until you truly sat down during COVID. So I did a little bit of an introduction, and maybe you want to kind of fill the gaps.
Yes, yeah, I used to be an artist manager, so I was traveling a bit, that's true. But I noticed that I want to be more of a creative or artist myself. And yeah, writing was always a part of me. Like I started writing in elementary school, where it began with rather like short stories about my favorite animals back then. And then it turned into yeah, more so of a diary situation where I was reflecting already, even though I didn't really know what reflection was back then, I think. But this is how it then transformed into me now writing more in poetry and thoughts and just feelings and trying to cope with everything. Um, yeah, life hits me with pretty much. And yeah, also along the way, I started to teach myself to be a photographer and director. Still, mainly, I'm working with artists, musicians. Music is also a passion of mine, and I always wanted to work in that field. And yeah, from artist management and event management to photography, directing, and then at some point, I just had the feeling, or more so an urge, that I really wanted to express more of my inner world and how I feel and how I transition in life and cope with situations. So I decided that I wanted to share my poetry with the world. And there was a really profound situation that I had in March this year, just before COVID really hit.
Mm-hmm.
I was in New York and I had a Reiki session, and right after, I had a tarot card reading session. And there I was told once again, it wasn't the first time that I heard that, but once again that I should write and that I should use this talent and that this is the part in me, because she also said that she can feel and sense that I'm a healer and that this is my path of yeah, how to use this power of mine of healing people and helping
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
So yeah.
So why did you? The question is quite there on the table, I think. But why did you never think about following that advice in the first place? Because when we got to know each other a little bit, you told me that your grandmother, is that right, always kind of told you you should be writing, or somebody in the family, wasn't it? I'm not sure.
It is my aunt. Yeah,
It's your aunt.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you not follow that advice or vocation?
Um, when she told me over the years, like at least in the last 7 to 10 years, I heard it a couple of times of her. She's also like pretty much into astrology, and she was reading my horoscopes, or still reading my horoscopes regularly. And this is when it always came up. And I think for the longest time, I always just thought, well, I am writing, but I never really got in my head to that point of publishing anything. It
Mm,
was more so I always saw it for me as a coping mechanism of dealing with life and my ups and downs and what is happening to me, which I still do. Like this
mm,
is also how the book came to be. Like it's really for me to work on myself and reflect and yeah. But I think it was also a lot of fear. I never really got over the wall that the fear just like built
mm,
to even think that this would be a possibility of publishing something that I am writing.
mm,
So it wasn't even in my cosmos of possibilities for the longest time. And that changed, I would say, within the last 2 to 3 years, where I was thinking more and more about it. And then I started to use my poems as captions for my Instagram pictures, for example, for the photography work that I'm doing. Um, and then yeah, more and more feedback, positive feedback came in, and
mm,
also um, more interest in it and questions about it, that I was yeah, just thinking about it even more and like considering it. But the last push I think I really needed was when I had that tarot card session,
mm,
where Hilda is her name, told me that yeah, this is my path and I should really give it a try. And then that's pretty much what I did. I went home because I had to cancel the rest of the trip because of COVID. And I think a week later, I was already typing all my poems out because I'm always writing them by hand. And then I typed them out, printed
mm,
them, put them in my one room apartment on the floor, and just pushed them around to see how it works for me. Yeah.
mm. It's almost like I feel like we're witnessing a writer being born as such, like born in shaping form. That's why we're talking today. And in me, I see these conflicts with people that are dabbling in art, let's say dabbling, because I think the people who already subscribe themselves to be full blown artists, they simply are. And they're just waiting on that the money meets the vocation. But between everything that you did, I was wondering, like, it sounded to me like you made yourself a director of video editing, and you were bold enough to do that. Why would you not be bold enough to write? That is, or call yourself a writer?
That's a good question. I don't really have an answer for that. I think um, maybe it was also that I never really saw it as something I wanted, because it was there forever for me. Like I was writing, my mom was writing, she wrote most of my favorite um, stories she told me when I was little. So I think it was just something that was so normal in my life that it was part of my life, but in my everyday life and just for my personal life, that I never really got to that point of thinking I could make a career out of this and
Hmm.
other people could be interested in it. Um, and but also when I started thinking about it, that I had the interest in it of publishing something, this is I think when the fear was the bigger part that kept
Hmm.
me from doing it.
Hmm.
And I think it was a transition phase. Like being an artist manager, I was there to represent an artist, a person, their art. And I think this part, now that I'm reflecting now back to that time, I'm able to see that I needed to have that phase of, it was like a learning phase for me, because
Yeah.
everything I learned in that time I can really implement right now for myself to
Hmm.
represent myself as an author, a writer, an artist now.
Hmm.
So I think it was really a transition from representing someone else towards okay, now I'm stepping back and still being in that phase that I feel comfortable in, which is like the music business, working with artists, but like kind of transitioning into an artist myself. And then at some point, I really got back to the core passion, which is writing, and that just happened now this year. And I think it totally makes sense regarding 2020 in general. Like this year, I have the feeling it's just really there for all of us to look within and find out what we really want and where we want to go. So this is what really happened with me, and it's still happening.
Yeah, as I'm hearing that you have greater interests in how we are being influenced, you talk about getting uh, tarot cards read to you. You read, you hear your horoscope through a professional astrologer. So we're not talking about the ones that are in the magazines, obviously.
Yeah.
But the so many people are not aware. What I heard you saying that you weren't aware that the thing that is most natural to you is your biggest gift, and it seems so when you said, like, writing seems so familiar to your family and what you do, and reflecting back on yourself through whatever methods there are is the most natural thing. And I think little is understood about what we call our life purpose or dharma in Sanskrit, that it really comes through the easiest methods. And for those who have dabbled in the spiritual path or are more familiar with texts, it keeps me reminding that it's almost like that we need to become aware that life is super simple. Life is just simple. We're making it very complex and hard.
Okay.
It's all about practicing life at the end of the day. And so, what I heard you saying is that you've been practicing your writing um, for a good while through journaling or writing diary. But where did it kind of pivot into poetry?
Hmm.
Is there a
I
moment you
can
remember, maybe?
Yeah, I can. I remember definitely when poetry was a part in school that I just really noticed that I'm enjoying it and that I found it interesting of just reading through poetry and trying to understand what the writer meant by certain metaphors he or she was using and how the structure of the poem came to be. Um, and before that, I never really was in touch with poetry that much. Like I never really read poetry myself. I was reading a lot since I'm little. Like I loved books and I loved the word itself always. Um, but I think it was when I was maybe around 16, 17, where I really got more into music,
Hmm.
of meaning just the interest of lyrics and reading them and understanding them and not just listening to the song itself, but try to, yeah, take it into different parts to see how it came to be and how like the sense of it was made by the writer also, where I really saw the connection between poetry and music. Um, and this is when I was more interested in general. And this is also when I started to read um, poetry books. But as soon as I realized the connection between music and poetry, I think this is when it all started.
Hmm.
But I didn't understand it back then.
Hmm.
Like it's. I think I just know it now, reflecting. I can see that this is where it kind of started. But when I really realized that I like to write poetry, um, was years later, which is now maybe about 7, 8 years ago. So 23, 24, I think, around that age. Which is also the age when I was like working with musicians a lot. So I was in the process of being in recording studios and seeing them write and being one of the first ones hearing the lyrics that they were writing, especially with rappers, which is
Hmm.
a lot. Um, yeah, it's like it is poetry.
Hmm.
And this is where I really started of being more interested in it, and also just realizing sometimes hearing lyrics from them, and then in my head I was like, oh, it would even sound better if you would use this word or that word. And then it took a while until I had the courage to actually speak out on that
Hmm.
and actually tell them, oh, I have an idea, why don't you try this? And this is, yeah, it was awakened in me
Hmm.
through my work in music, I would say.
Hmm. And so when you write poems, I remember my school poetry as well, and I love the poetry as well. And I remember that I hated to have to analyze it, to come down into the mechanics of. And if you would ask me to write a poem, I think that would be the part where I shy away. Will I be as blatant as just rhyme things that come A, B, in that kind of rhyme mechanism, or will I just pretend it's a poem by writing a sentence with a lot of spaces? So, how would you describe how these poems start to flow through you?
I think this is exactly what you just explained right now was also what kept me from having the courage of starting to write. Like just the fear of I could never be as good as XYZ. Um, and how I write now, or like within the last 3 years, um, I think, I mean, this book came to be, I was writing these poems in a time frame of 3 years, never really having in my mind that this will be something I want to publish. And I think this is how it worked, because I never had the
Mm,
pressure of it has to be good enough for someone else to enjoy. So I was just going along and writing, and I can't really say how it happens, because sometimes it's just a feeling that I have inside of me, like a kind of a pressure feeling, that where I'm feeling a little, I can't even put it into words what I'm feeling, but I'm not feeling very good, not positive in a way. It's just like a little limbo phase situation. And this is when I know that I have to write. And nothing is in my head. There are no words. There's nothing I think about I want to write about. I just sit down,
mm,
and pretty much as soon as the pen in my hand touches the paper, it starts. It just comes out. Um,
mm,
then other times I have had maybe a conversation and I can't let that go because it just did something to me, positive or negative, it doesn't even matter. And then I sit down with the intention of trying to resolve this, I don't know, confusion in my head about that conversation. So then I kind of have a
mm,
topic, but still, again,
mm,
it's not like really words in my head. And then sometimes I'm just walking around, and then words just pop in my head, and then I need to find paper and pen quickly to not lose it again. Um,
mm,
so it's totally different. Sometimes it's really just for me to reflect and cope with something, and I just have to release that feeling that is stuck in myself. And sometimes it's really a topic or a thing that I want to write about, and then I take that time.
mm.
And yeah, it happens also everywhere. Like I try to bring my notebook everywhere nowadays, just because I know that the inspiration, or that the inspiration can hit everywhere, or that feeling coming up can hit everywhere. So yeah, it's yeah, difficult to say.
So, do you believe writers are born, or can writing be something that you learn to do and get to flow in yourself? Get the flow of seeing words and hearing yourself through practice.
Hmm. I think so. Yes, I think as soon as there is the want of writing, I
Mm,
think then you already are a born writer. Because
mm,
if something interests you, then this is supposed to be a part of you in this lifetime.
mm,
I really truly
mm,
believe that. So even though you haven't written anything in, I don't know, 30, 40 years, and
yeah,
then that urge is just coming up because of maybe seeing someone else writing,
yeah.
or whatever it may be, then it was always, I think, in you.
Mm,
And so yeah, I think everyone can learn it too. And what I mean by that is just like learn to have the confidence of just doing it, because I think we are all able to write because we are all kind of able to communicate.
Yeah.
And it's just when we start overthinking
Hmm.
that it blocks us to actually
Yeah.
do it and let it out and let it flow.
Yeah, that's my thing. I got really hooked into writing by a book called Writing Down the Bone by Natalie Goldman. And a little bit what you're describing is almost what she is talking about when in this book. It's about like the way you have to be free to write and walk around and grasp grasp the words, and you never know when they are coming. And at the same time, there is a way of doing writing exercises that I love, setting the timer, sitting down, having the right pen, the pen that feels good to me, having the right book in front of me to write in. Just me as somebody who feels totally blocked about writing a lot. And I bought this really kitschy notebook from Disney World, and then a whole new world to discover, it says, and it's for children, but it made the writing so possible for me. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, that book is so over stupid, to me it's like, oh god, I would have bought something more precious before, and then this is going to be my writing journal, and now this is like, wow, this is so kitschy, I can do anything with it. And so that's how I started to release my own blockage a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear you mentioning that as well. The moment you come with a description of a job, it's not as easy. So I bow my head to everybody who has to write, who comes from journalism or has to write
Mm-hmm.
content, and how they kind of really manage to pull that off the desk, every time. I know a few writers now, and they seem to be able to do that. I'm certainly not in that vein, and you seem to be more one that comes from beauty and healing, which is then also not so much a mechanical thing to
Mm-hmm.
to move forward. But this could be a good point to read one of your poems to us. Would you
Yeah,
care to?
I would love to. Okay, so this is page 92. Finding peace in the moment is a new favorite thing of mine. It makes me feel more alive than anything else. Calm, steady. Only my breathing and my heartbeat remind me of the physical shell I chose this time. Everything else floats and hovers around me, and I can feel the energy flowing.
Hmm.
I really like remember when I was writing this, because that was definitely also how you just like said it really nicely right now. Like just coming from healing, that was really a moment where I realized how much of just listening to myself and my inner voice and the practice of meditation is really helping me to calm down and to be able to listen to what is really important
Hmm.
inside of myself, and not be distracted by all of these thoughts and confusion in my head that is fueled by the fear. Yeah.
I love that. And as the universe wants it, so I meet more and more people, or I hear about more and more people who are being asked to do different meditations, different forms of healing, and where we don't really look at them as proper tools. You were mentioning that initially at the beginning of this interview, where you said, like, I was asked to do it because it's my healing method. And I heard about somebody who's been asked, or that's been asked to just sing mantras and not to sit. She's a Buddhist, she needs to sing. She can't do the silent sitting and whatever. And this particular woman, the book I mentioned about, Natalie Goldman, she was also a Zen Buddhist, and she was asked to write as part of her meditation, which is then, as you say, a path of harmonizing. Healing is nothing more than balancing yourself at the end of the day, and finding balance, and maybe through that expression, really enveloping other people to do the same and look out for the words and the resonance of the frequency that comes across with everything we write or sing. Yeah. Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
You haven't said how the book is called. So if anybody wants to pick it up, where can we find you?
The book is called Finding Me. Um,
Mm.
I chose this title because when I started writing these poems that ended up in the book, I really found myself in a place, or I really didn't find myself in any place. I really felt lost. And it is, I think, possible throughout the book when you read it from it's like 3 chapters, how I rediscovered myself, or more so how I put myself back together in a new form, like Gianna 2.0, maybe. Um, and yeah, this is why I chose the title. And the book is going to be out on November 11th. So
Uh-huh.
a
Can you
few
give us
more days.
you got it already there. For those who are on
Yeah,
YouTube and watching, can we have a sneak peek?
of course. So that is the cover.
Ah, so beautiful. Simple. Yes.
Yeah, really
Mm.
simple. Thank you.
Mm. And where can we purchase it if we are inclined to?
Pretty much everywhere, on many online shops like Amazon, for example.
Mm.
It's going to be also in bookstores. It's going to be pitched by the publisher to 40,000 different retailers and shops
Mm.
over the world. So pretty much
Wow.
everywhere. Yeah.
I just realized because we're both in Germany, we're both in Berlin, you have a German surname, and you're writing in English. Why do you choose to write in English?
Um, I don't know. I really felt drawn to the English language since I
Mm.
can remember. I think it's also a big part of what I said before, that that music is just like such a big passion of mine, and I remember definitely situations where I was younger, where I was sitting at home with a dictionary trying to translate lyrics to myself, like English
Mm.
songs,
Yeah.
to understand it better. And that um, also turned into watching interviews in English and trying to understand them. And I also went to a bilingual school, which is
Mm.
probably also that helped me in the sense of not being afraid of using the English language. Then definitely also later working with all these musicians, a lot of them are native speakers and came to Berlin, which is kind of a melting pot of artists and musicians in
Absolutely.
general.
Yeah.
So, and then also, yeah, my partner's relationships that I was having and still having, a lot of people, native speakers as well. A lot of my friends are English speaking. So it never really, it really feels like my life, and that my mom chose to send me to this bilingual school also because I liked the English language already in elementary school. Um, just prepared myself for everything that was coming later. And I felt, or I found myself, um, I think it was just easier for me to express my feelings in the English language for whatever reason, even though I know German is a very um, poetic language.
Yeah.
Um, it was always easier for me to express my feelings in English. Even now today, when I talk to people in German, so many English words slip out of me because I have the feeling this is really, it's just more precise of what I want to say in that moment. So yeah, that's
Hmm. So
why.
my last question to you, Jana, is what's your favorite word?
My favorite word. Oh, that's a very interesting question. Hmm. I think it's transition,
Hmm.
because it's more so that I love the meaning behind it than the word itself.
Mm-hmm.
But I find myself using it a lot in my writing and in my conversations, just because I find myself or I find myself realizing that life is an entire transition phase, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
That's a
you.
beautiful finish line. Life is transition. So get on to the roller coaster.
Exactly.
Anything else you want to say to the listener? Word of advice or something encouraging before we go?
Yeah, just listen to your inner voice and just go for it, because the fear will always be there. And you just have
Yeah.
to do it regardless.
Yes. You have to do it regardless. And it's so beautiful because the fear is just one of those kind of doors that leads us to the beautiful garden that we're avoiding to see
Exactly.
and live in. Hmm. Thank you again for coming onto the show with this very young book and daring to really go forward and publishing yourself into this podcast. And I wish you the very best of luck with this project. And I hope there will be many more books coming through you and to us. And have a beautiful day, Gianna.
Thank you so much. You
Bye
too.
bye, dear listener. See you next week. If you enjoy listening to my podcast, please consider to become a patron at patreon.com/Alexandra Kreis and pledge your donation.